Back with me is former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor Katie McFarland, and joining us is former federal prosecutor Jim Trusty. First to you, Jim, your take on the newly declassified documents released by Senate Judiciary about the Trump-Russia probe?
Well, it's a big moment. I mean, there's a lot to parse through. There's 11 transcripts that have been released. There's a lot of central figures whose stories are going to be more complete now. I think I kind of fast forward a little bit. I have to say that I have not totally given up on the notion of accountability for people like Jim Comey, who turned a small portion of the FBI into a political weapon to the expense of a lot of people, including your guest here, KT. I think the Durham investigation is still alive. It's going to be very interesting now that he's been given that status as senior counsel. This is a real integrity test for Merrick Garland as an attorney general to see whether or not he takes the same course of action that Barr did in a special counsel report, which is not only releasing it to Congress, but to the general public. I think there's going to be an interesting reckoning here if we see how the Durham investigation turns out sometime in early 2021.
Yeah, we're still waiting on the Durham investigation, KT. And given what Jim Trusty was just saying, KT, let's jump into the Wayback Machine. Let's jump back into the time machine and go back to August of 2016 when Peter Strzok was texting Lisa Page, and they were saying, Lisa Page was saying at the FBI, Trump is never going to be president, right? And Peter Strzok said, no, we're going to stop him. And then within a couple months, Strzok was texting Lisa Page saying Stuart Evans at the Justice Department is slowing us down trying to get the FISA wiretap on Carter Page. He's putting up a fight. So, and then, but you just pointed out, KT, that, yeah, there was that Hillary Clinton-funded, Democrat-funded Steele dossier that was being used to wiretap Carter Page. So your take on the context of that, KT?
Well, I think it is important to go back and look at the timeline of this. Before the election, they thought, well, Trump will never win. But anyway, just in case, let's set the seeds now. Let's put the things in motion just in case, so that we can then turn back to those things if Donald Trump does win and we can destroy his presidency. They had already set the thing up. They probably didn't need to use it in their minds. And even after Trump was elected, they didn't like it. They had a resistance internally. But the real thing started, and it got steam and it got going once Jim Comey was fired. Before that, it was maybe in the vault, could use it if they needed it, but once Jim Comey got fired, then it was all steam ahead. Get Donald Trump, have a special counsel, have an investigation, go back and look at that Steele dossier, which we know was a fraud. Let's go after everybody. So I really put it absolutely in Jim Comey's lap.
So, given what you're saying, you wonder what the insurance policy that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page was talking about. Was it leaking the Steele dossier to the media to deflect away from the Hillary Clinton email scandal? Jim, what do you think? Was that the insurance policy, the Steele dossier?
Well, the context of it certainly makes it sound like it's a political poison pill, something that could be released that would keep Trump from being elected. And it makes me, again, want to step back for a quick second. Inspector General reports, this one was very damning. It's much more than just, misfeasance or nonfeasance. It's malfeasance. And it's a very damning report, but they're institutionally incomplete. Inspector generals are administrative actors. They don't draw the inferences like you're asking me to draw right now. It may be a very common sense inference. They literally look at things from what did we see in writing and what did people tell us in interviews, but that's not how criminal prosecutions work. So I think when you're talking about John Durham, he'll ask the hard questions of witnesses and they'll draw inferences and they can develop this in a more complete way than what's already very damning on the administrative side with the Inspector General.
KT, what's really disturbing about these documents, again, they show that the FBI and intelligence officials go into the FISA court to get FISA wiretaps, and often they do not have what is necessary to get those wiretaps. It's a body of evidence called a Woods file. But by the way, practically, I would say more than 90% of FISA wiretaps are approved. So it's unnerving and scary that we're politicizing in the intelligence community, and it's so easy to get these powerful FISA wiretap without these Woods file body of evidence. What do you say?
Well, look, if they can go after the President of the United States, I was the most one of the most powerful people in American foreign policy at the beginning of the Trump administration. If they could go after people like us, they can go after anybody they feel like. And that, I think, again, it's to the point where what kind of justice do we have here? And, you know, the other thing, we haven't seen everything yet. My sources tell me there's a whole tranche of documents that are coming Sunday night or Monday, declassified documents, far more extensive than what Lindsey Graham and the Judiciary Committee released today, and things that are going to absolutely speak to how much the FBI knew, how much the senior leadership knew, when did they know it, and how did they abuse their positions of trust and power. The other thing I find really upsetting is
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but here's one more thing that's worth pointing out. Joe Biden is starting to appoint some of these same people who were part of the resistance, who were part of the senior leadership in the intelligence and national security committees. He's starting to appoint them to senior positions in the Biden administration. So not only are these people not going to ever be held accountable for it, they've been promoted for it.
All right, Katie McFarland and Jim Trusty, I wish we had more time. Maybe you guys could come back on Monday. We're going to keep digging, and we'll look for that document download that KT just referenced, possibly coming on Sunday night. It's good to have you both on. Thanks so much for your insights. I really appreciate it.